Jeff, what makes you so enthusiastic about all things Greenlandic?
I don't really know how I fell into it, Marie, but it was a place and a relationship I never expected to have. And by virtue of working with them when they were in Newfoundland, helping to build a shelter, they became my friends. And then they invited me to Greenland, and they treated me like I was the king of the world. And then when they're here, I treat them like they're the most important people in the world. And over the years, we developed a lot of trust, and that's the big secret there. So, I'm very protective of them, and I look out for them, and I guess we have a huge mutual respect, and they ask my opinion, and it matters, and they don't really care that I'm from Newfoundland or from anywhere else. They care that we have a skill set and something to offer here.
That's how it started.
Yeah.
When you say you built the shelter, it was the fiber-optic link that brought you together. Yeah. How did you get involved in that?
Essentially, it was a phone call, and I was building the fiber-optic links around Newfoundland and into Nova Scotia, and the Greenlandic government were looking at coming here because of those links that were put in. And they were told that I was the guy who was designing this, and so they called me. And initially they asked me, if they could find me a piece of land to land the cable, which we did. And then they asked if I could help them with the landing of the cable, which we did. And then they asked if I could, manage the design of this beautiful building, which we did. And then when it was all over, they asked if, I could look after it for them, and which I said absolutely. So that became a really solid relationship, and to the point where I'm the Canadian representative for Greenland in Canada, and so that's where we are today.
So what have you learned about the way the Greenlanders do business?
Greenlanders are very reserved about business, and it takes them a while to warm up to you. Because you've got to remember, Greenland was a very, I would say isolated, but very closed society. And the opportunities that existed were mostly inside the island. Now, with opening up the opportunities, they're trying to figure out how they move outside and deal with it. So they're very much learning. And the thing about Greenlandic people is that, it's not about telling people what to do. It's about share your experiences with us and let us make our decisions. Let us learn about the right ways and the wrong ways to do. But we want to partner with you and learn together as opposed to just you telling us how to do stuff. So they're they're like a sponge now. They're learning. They very much want to learn from Newfoundland, from Canada, from the U.S., and from their traditional paternalistic in Denmark and Europe.
What are the opportunities you see for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians in Greenland in the way that it is opening itself up for more mining, offshore oil exploration, etc.?
For me personally, the long-term thing for me is I look at this cable that we have between Newfoundland and Greenland, and it's a digital highway that we have between the two.
You call it an umbilical cord.
I call it an umbilical cord because really it's, we are physically connected by this cable between Greenland and Newfoundland. Like, we're connected, and as well as Iceland. So the opportunity is, what can we do with this broadband facility? And at this point right here, there is no one between us and Greenland. So the fiber optic networks that come into here, the bandwidth is immense. And if we can use that bandwidth for education, for healthcare, how can we do that? How do we can support industry with that bandwidth? And that's for us to think about and find out what makes sense. Education is huge, in terms of the programs that we have here and the backgrounds that we have in Labrador and delivery of educational programs. Greenland right now is on the verge of a huge, I think, oil and gas industry. We have the education. We were Greenland in the 1970s. The parallels are ominous, and we have the lessons learned, and that's what I speak about when I speak at conferences in Greenland. Here were the lessons learned. Use our lessons and apply them. Get ahead of the curve. And so we can do well in training. We can do well in supporting them. We can do well in supplying them, because this is our area. We know how to work in the North Atlantic. And the Greenlandic people are very open to working with Newfoundlanders. There's been groups down here from Greenland that I've hosted. There's been Newfoundlanders going back and forth. So right now we're at a feeling out stage. So the oil and gas is another huge opportunity. You know, the mining industry is another. There are companies in Newfoundland that have been supplying mining equipment to Greenland for years. And I'm still discovering those different things. You know, we used to move workers from Newfoundland to Greenland to work in gold mines. So it's all very much, you know, we need to look at what the strategy is to do it, as opposed to just jumping at a specific thing. But I'm very optimistic. I'm very passionate about it. I see the opportunities for Newfoundland, and I'm working very tightly with NOIA, and as well as the government of Newfoundland to find and realize those opportunities.
So what needs to happen now to actually really get the ball rolling? I mean, do you feel the ball is rolling? We've got the delegation coming here in February from Greenland. How do we build on the relationships that have already been started?
I think that the thing what happens in Greenland is people show up and they look around and then they realize that the business is not going to happen right then and there, and then they leave. Our thing is that we needed to continue the dialogue, and it's not going to happen overnight. This is a near-term to longer-term opportunity, and we've got to look at what happened here. It's going to take a long time. So by us interacting, by us working with the educational institutions, with their government, with their employers association, our associations, connecting together, and by doing that, it will bring us into their opportunity. And as opposed to just us showing up and saying, where is it, and I don't really see it right now. So it's a slower process, and one that, you know, it's just going to take some time to do. And I think that right now, you know, there's a few people started the ball rolling. Now people are getting more interested. There's a lot of back and forth. We just had to keep it up and sustain it. And we had to find that sweet spot that we can provide value, because that's what it's all about, is finding the best way to provide the Greenlandic people with value. We're not going to replace the history between Denmark and Greenland. I mean, those paternalistic ties are huge. The big thing for us is to find out where Newfoundland can best add value and stick to it, and then kind of put a fence in the ground, and a post in the ground, and then grow outwards from there. That's how I think the best way to go. And leaders are emerging now. Like saying, NOIA is taking a huge leading role, and they're very passionate about leveraging the experience that we have here in certain areas.
So we've got the fiber-optic cable. What other connections do we need in order to build our relationship?
That's a good point. The fiber-optic cable is a great digital connection, but we still, this is a physical world. We still need to look at transportation links, whether it be shipping and whether it be airlines. And I've been advocating for several years the air routes between Newfoundland and Greenland. Not because I don't want to get my elite status flying Air Canada, I lose that, but the ability to supply people, whether it be for training or supplying the oil and gas industry, and giving the routes back and forth from just normal trade or normal tourism and transportation. You know, it's
now, is that something you think a Newfoundland airline should provide, or should it be Air Greenland?
I think we need to have the dialogue with them to what makes sense. Again, this is going to be business case driven, but there's going to have to also be, I think, some support to get it going and some commitments on our side to be able to put the people in the seats. You know, if we have companies that are working in the oil and gas sector in Greenland, we need to be able to get those companies to use those seats to go back and forth, and vice versa. And you know, Greenlandic people need to use those seats to come here, to train, to go to school, to leverage our infrastructure, and to travel. And we need that commitment, and we may need to have some support from both governments to get it going in the beginning. But because it's been tried before, and it just didn't, it just didn't take, because I guess the plan was too aggressive. But I think to start small and to grow will build the connections, and over time, it will make sense.
Cairn Energy says that we have to be competitive, that they're not going to favor Aberdeen companies or Danish companies over Newfoundland for their operations as long as we're competitive. How do we become competitive?
Well, we need to understand, we need to make an apples-to-apples comparison in terms of what the competitiveness means. You know, we need to fully understand, how Karen defines competitive. And, that's a job that NOI is going through now. We've met with Karen several times, and they've given us that message of being competitive. We think we're competitive in some areas, and in some areas that we think we're competitive, we're being told we may not be competitive. So we are now looking at how do we make sure that we are absolutely competitive. And we have to earn that business with Karen. I mean, it's not something that they're going to give us because of distance. It's something that we've got to do our analysis, and there might be some areas that we probably aren't, but we have to work on them. But I think, knowing this industry here, that there are a lot of amazing people working in the oil and gas sector here, and the products that we have are world class. And I know we are competitive, and we're fighting to show we are competitive. Because what happens is if you're an incumbent in Aberdeen and you're used to supplying an incumbent oil and gas company, it's hard to break in. So we've got to find a way to break in and then slowly win the trust of not just Karen, but the other operators who are going to be drilling off the coast. And we had to earn it, and we had to package ourselves. Just proximity is not going to win us the business.
But couldn't that work for supplying the offshore rigs that they're going to have there doing exploration next summer? There's going to be quite a lot of rigs there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we have to get our act involved in, and we are. And we're working really hard. And there's great leadership at NOIA, and they're working very hard to make sure that we have the competitive message and we have the product that these companies want.
Does the province need another port?
I don't think it needs another port. I should defer that to the right people at NOIA to answer that question. So I don't have an answer for that one.
Right, because if we were going to supply, we'd need a lot more supply ships able to come back and forth here.
Yeah, intuitively you think that, but I don't know if that's the case. I think that the individuals down at the base in St. John's and Bay Bowls, they would be probably better able to answer that question. But I can tell you they're very sharp people.
So what do you think the future is of Newfoundland-Greenland relations?
I think that, I think it's going to be, I'd say in 5 years, you will see a lot more education focus in terms of us working with the Greenlandic people and providing educational services in a broad range of things, including the offshore. I think you'll see air links between and possibly transportation or sea links between. I think you'll see that Newfoundland playing a major role in that, because the natural tendency is for Newfoundland offshore to move to the Arctic. And we look very much further in time, and the Greenland is a stepping stone to the Arctic. So I see us working with Greenlandic people, working together, establishing, facilities together, and then moving off to the Arctic, and Newfoundland being the supply base moving forward. Because this is where the knowledge and expertise is. The way that Norway is to the North Sea, Newfoundland will be to that part of the Arctic. I mean, I'm convinced that that skill is here, and that expertise will be leveraged into the future.
What are the challenges we have to overcome to get there?
The biggest challenge we have right now is making sure that we are competitive, and that we truly understand what our value add is. The oil industry is all driven by value add, and we need to make sure that we find out what we do best, and that we sell it, and that people use it for their purposes. And then once you get in, you will grow and move forward. We have a very dynamic oil industry here, and we're going to sell our capabilities. We have a very dynamic mining industry, and we're going to sell our capabilities, as well as our educational industry is very dynamic, and our experience with government. I think that our biggest challenge is to keep the inertia moving forward. People talk a lot, and they talk around things, and turning talk into action is the biggest thing. And I'm always an advocate for let's do it, and hear all the right reasons, and not say, yeah, that's a great idea, but we can't do that, whatever. It takes leadership in government, it takes leadership in the oil and gas industry, it takes leadership in the mining industry, and we need to work together as a cohesive team as opposed to everyone doing their own thing. And I think that's starting to generate now, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
What would you say to a worker who now is looking to northern Alberta as the future for his job or whatever? how would you compare the opportunities in Greenland with Fort McMurray?
I think that it's the oil and gas industry is like we're not going to see activity in production in Greenland for 10 years. It's a long time. I think that we're never going to stop feeding Alberta for providing resources there. But for that individual worker, it's all about getting experience, in how the oil and gas industry works up there and getting a skill and getting a trade, and how can you apply it back to those companies that are going to be drilling up there in the future. We have resources that are so experienced, working offshore. That experience is golden, and that is what these companies want. They want to be able to have execution certainty. And when you have execution certainty, you have to have all the right people with the right materials and the right equipment in the right place at the right time to be successful. And because drilling offshore, as we learned from the Gulf, is being watched, and you don't want to make a mistake while you're up there.
In terms of job opportunities, could Greenland be the next Fort McMurray?
Not in the next 5 years, I don't think. I think that if the oil and gas industry takes off in Greenland, if the lessons learned here in Newfoundland, it could be, and it's not just oil and gas.
It could be what?
It could be more. It could be, there was a mining activity going up. There's an iron ore mine being built there. There's the aluminum smelter potentially that might happen there. Rare earth elements. Newfoundlanders could be, with the direct air links, Newfoundlanders could be supplying a lot of people up there. But not in the next couple of years, but potentially 10 years down the road as production hits, and maybe a gravity-based structure could be built, maybe not, floating production systems. Like over time, it may happen. But in the next 5 to 10 years is a long way out from the oil and gas perspective, right?
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.